Wow. Well, my name, I'm going to introduce myself to a few of you because I'm not even sure everybody out there knows me. My name is Jo Bell, and I am one of the folks here at Sanctuary in the Woods. Now, many of you I know that Sanctuary in the Woods, we are out here just outside of Austin, Texas, and we had a vision to create a nonprofit retreat center where folks could get off the grid and come out and rest, reflect, reframe, and then re-engage their lives. We were well on the way doing that this first quarter of this year, and we had lawyers out here and civil engineers out here. We were really moving and shaking with all the topographical and legal details, trying to get them all to line up properly. And then suddenly COVID hit, right? And we as a board, like the rest of you, I'm sure, just took a big, deep breath and said, first off, what does this mean to us as people, as folks living in community? And then certainly, what does it mean to us being sanctuary? How can we still fulfill our desire to offer inspirational and important life-giving programming when we're trying to build a retreat center when folks can't come and retreat? So I think we gathered in the living room. My script here tells you to say a few bottles of water, plenty of mugs of coffee. I'm sure there was a bottle or two of wine. And then Sanctuary Online was suddenly born. And what we've been doing ever since the first week in May is we've offered programming, some level of programming every Tuesday night. And so we asked ourselves, who's our audience? Who's the wider audience we wish to serve? And really every night it lands on what questions are people asking right now? What are relevant topics of conversation? And that's how we initially filled our calendar. And we really honestly asked some masters of their crafts. We've had people, actually Lillie, you spoke right away early on talking about the change cycle, right? And you came on and helped us understand just our world was changing so much in those first few weeks of COVID. We had Nick come on and talk about mental health and issues around mental health with all the restrictions that have been placed upon many of us. Last week, Cheryl took a turn and did Zoom for Dummies. We did Zoom 101, and we had a great class and learned how to make these kind of experiences even better. And at the end of the day, as we began to take a look at our June calendar, we really wanted to talk about what's going on right now and help people to understand and help people to actually bring their questions and their comments and their perspectives to a safe place. In our world, at least certainly in the United States, it seems like a binary view is often, it's an okay place to be nowadays. You know, it's okay to be A or B versus some level of both and. And very often, at least my experience has been that when I'm trying to engage some folks who I may have a different opinion of or try to understand their opinion if it's different from mine, you know, sometimes that conversation is very challenging. So we sat down and we said, how can we engage many of the topics that are, you know, my goodness, the world is still marching, right? We're still in protest 21, 22, 23 days after George Floyd was murdered. And we thought, you know what, we need to have this conversation and address it in a way like Sanctuary wants to address it, with love and care. Differences of opinions are fine. And we asked Lillie, you are, if I remember right, were you born in Alabama? So when it comes down to college football and I see Roll Tide, I know that comes right from your heart, right? Right from the very core of who you are, right? Well,
that's Lillie, the best thing I got from Alabama was Roll Tide.
Lillie is a great friend of Sanctuary in the Woods. Lillie is a great, just a student and a scholar and a teacher and a lover of life. And we thought there was probably no better person that could host our conversation and take us through the journey of the topics that we landed on tonight. And Lillie, I'll just open that up really briefly and say that we wanted to start off with talking about reconciliation. We wanted to help folks understand why when people say all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter, it's not really a helpful response. We wanted folks to understand white privilege. What does this mean? How do I recognize it? What can I do about it, right? We wanted to talk about racism and systemic racism And then we also wanted to give you resources. So at the end of the night tonight, we have a whole bunch of slides that really ask the question, that answer the question. What can I read? What can I listen to? What can I watch? Who can I follow? You know, what can I do? And so Lily's given us some phenomenal resources. We'll put those at the end of the conversation tonight, and I'm going to encourage you to take your phones out and take a picture of those slides, because Lily's done some fabulous work putting together some great resources and some takeaways. So that's my hosting job, Lillie. I'm going to give this to you. I know you haven't been feeling well, and just God bless you for still being here and hosting a conversation. You've had a bit of bronchitis, right? So just everybody, just turn your volumes up and turn your microphones off. And Lillie, the stage is yours, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us again tonight and helping us with this conversation. So important.
My pleasure. Thank you for entrusting me, especially with this topic. And thank all of you for being here. This is awesome that you're here. To me, just that you got here, that alone says a lot about your engagement in this topic. I want to start out by saying that I am not an expert on racism. I'm trying to become an expert at being a student of racism.
There you go.
And white privilege and white supremacy. So I just want to put that out there and qualify that, that I am not an expert, but I'm determined to engage in being someone who's learning and has a deep learning curve myself. So mostly what I want to do tonight is just share a few things that I'm learning and make sure that we have some time to do some conversation. Joby, I think we might need to use the breakout rooms because there's so many people that having a big conversation might be a little harder. So if you'll kind of get ready for maybe 3 or 4 to a breakout room, and we'll do that in a little bit, okay?
We'll do that. We'll also manage the questions for you, Lillie. So if anybody has questions that come up as Lillie's working through the conversation and you don't want to raise your hand and kind of engage the conversation or with a question, you can go ahead and put a question in the chat box, and Barb and Cheryl and I will manage that for you, Lillie. I'll do one of those really subtle things like this if I think there's a great question, and bring your attention to that.
Okay, that's great. All right, that sounds good. That sounds good. So I know that we have some people of color and African Americans on the call tonight. I want to say at the outset that I think that most of what this is about is for white people and people who identify as white. That's really that's my social location. So that, and I also think that it is it's white people's work now. You know, I think we've gotten to this place where all of us have to own, if we are white, that the work is ours to do. And so I want to say that to me, this is a beginning that you would show up here, is for us to go ahead and own that this is our work to do and that we need to get started doing it, that we've delayed it far too long. And there does seem, at least in this country, there seems to be this momentum that it is inviting us to that party of finally doing our work. I want to reference Brene Brown. Some of you might be familiar with her, author of The Gifts of Imperfection, Rising Strong, a bunch of books. But one of the things she talks about in terms of giving your whole heart to something is that you have to be in the arena. And what she says about that is using the arena as a metaphor, like it might be the bull and the matador in the arena, or it might be a sports team where the team, the players, the coaches, the officials, they're all on the field and they're playing, or they're all on the court and they're playing. They're in the game. They're doing their work. Versus the people sitting in the arena. She calls them the cheap seats, where people are up there feeling like they can pass judgment on the folks who are actually doing the work, or they're up there looking on and thinking they know best, and they're being critical or yelling at a coach for a particular play they call, but they're not actually in the arena doing the work. And so I think that's what I want to ask us to do. If tonight is the starting place for you, is that we get in the arena we do our work, and we don't sit off on the sidelines in the cheap seats, passing judgment, making our comments from afar when we're not actually even in the arena. And so that's my first invitation to you, is to do that. What is the work? I think at least one way to look at it is that it's the work of reconciliation. And one of the things I want to ask you to do tonight is to consider what reconciliation really is, and that by its very nature, reconciliation, I think we're about to see this, yeah. By its very nature, reconciliation requires that the offender make the first gesture toward the one who has been offended. So let's read that again. Reconciliation by its very nature requires that the offender make the first gesture toward the one who has been offended. You can pull that back now. So I want us to think about that as white people, that we have been the offenders when it comes to race, and in particular in our country, African Americans, Black folks. And so it is our job to make the gesture of reconciliation. It's not incumbent on Black people to teach us or to reach to us. It is actually incumbent on us to do that. So I hope that we'll start to own that and realize that we have to make those steps. It's our turn to make those steps. And even if there's rejection when we make those gestures, we keep trying. All right, so any quick questions coming up about reconciliation, Joe? I'm seeing one. I saw one in there. Joe, turn on your microphone.
From Nita. Nita said she was wondering, are a large number of the real offenders gone, and how do they engage in reconciliation?
No, because I think we're all offenders every day, all the time. And I think the real work is becoming more aware of how we offend and our unconscious ways of offending. Our unconscious ways of, the term for it is microaggressions, where there are these just little things that are said or done that we don't even realize that they are offensive, or that they come across as being aggressive toward a person of color. And we just walk right through them because we're not paying attention or being aware that that's what they are. So no, I don't think the people who are the offenders are gone by a long shot. I would say I'm one, so I would own that, and I would ask all of you to take a deeper look at that for yourselves.
Lillie,
anything else, Joby?
Yeah, I was chatting with a friend the other day. I told you in preparation for this, I wanted to get a few books under myself and some TED Talks, some of the resources that you sent, so I could help you in this conversation tonight. And I was chatting with a friend and just realized, I thought I'd done some work, and realized, wow, you might think you've done half the work you need to do, or something like that. And then you really realize, once you become a little more conscious and open up without taking offense and without ego pushing back, that I've done just a very tiny percentage. And someone said the learning curve is just straight up right now, and how wonderful for all of us if we can be open to that and not take offense and not push back, but just be open to that amazing learning curve. And that's what tonight is about. It's not that anyone is intending to harm, but until we become conscious, until we do some of that work, we don't realize how often, like you're saying, Lillie, how often we're offering those microaggressions, and we are doing harm, not with intention, but kind of just out of ignorance, because we haven't done some of that good work, which is why we're here tonight following you. Thank you.
Right. Well, and it also means that, by the way, we ought not to reach out to our Black friends to be the people to tell us we just did something. If you're lucky enough to have some Black folks in your life who will do that or don't mind doing that, that's one thing. But all in all, this, you know, I won't be able to say it enough tonight. It's our work to do. And it's not their work to teach us or to point out every time we say something. We need to find the ways to get ourselves on board with that. So we thought we'd pick out just some, maybe 3 things tonight. Maybe we'll get to all 3. I don't know. I think it depends on the richness of the conversation, but that are at least sort of the top of the line kind of things, and things we're hearing a lot right now. And they seem to be worthwhile for us to address a bit. I am just about sick to death, I'll confess to you, of people telling me that all lives matter every time I suggest that Black Lives Matter, or I hear anyone else suggest it. The onslaught of all lives matter is just, so I'm sick of it. Can you imagine how sick of it our Black siblings are? I mean, I can't even, I don't even have a place to put that in my white body, because I know I'm already sick of it. Because it's just, after a while, it's just so offensive. However, I also want to just say that I think sometimes I had a professor one time who said, you know, sometimes people are well-meaning but otherwise misguided. And I would say that I'm going to give some people the benefit of the doubt that all lives matter is well-intended, and still say it is otherwise misguided. So I just want to give you a couple of ways, perhaps metaphors, to help us understand what's really being said here. First of all, of course, all lives matter. All right, can we just table that? All right. Now, but what Black Lives Matter is about, so 2 metaphors I'll give you, is if you live in a neighborhood and your house is on fire, or a house in the neighborhood is on fire, and the fire engine comes to the neighborhood, they do not need to go to the houses that aren't burning. The fire truck needs to go to the house that is burning. That is Black Lives Matter. Not all lives are burning up. Not all lives have been neglected. Not all lives are suffering under the weight of oppression and white supremacy. So that is why we need to give it consideration above and beyond all other lives. Another one I heard the other day, which I thought was good, is that if you break your arm and you go to the doctor, and the doctor looks at you and says, well, all your bones matter, you're going to look back at him and say, yeah, but my arm is broken. Could you fix it, please? You know, I'm not worried about all my other bones right now. I'm worried about the one that's broken. And so Black lives are the ones that are broken, and we see it over and over everywhere we look, if we're willing to look. So those are two metaphors I would give you to think about why we say Black Lives Matter, and why we need to keep saying it, and why we need to not back away from it or be afraid when someone says, well, but all lives matter. I had someone go so far the other day as to tell me that it's white people that are doing the dividing and not being aware that all lives matter, and that we're even dividing by having hyphenated names. I mean, can you hear how ridiculous that is? That's somehow a division, and that's how we're breaking up the all lives matter thing. So white people will go to great extremes sometimes to try and defend our right to things. So, so I would like, if you would, to go into breakout rooms, Joe. And here's what I want you to do. There'll be 4 of you in a group. Is that right, Joe? Turn your microphone on.
I can do that.
Okay. And what I want you to do is, all of you will take just a couple of minutes, is just share one time that you have been confronted with the all lives matter. And it may be that it's in you, that you're confronted with it in yourself, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. The more you can own that and talk about it, the better off we'll be. All right? You understand what I want you to do? All right. You can go to your breakout rooms.
I'm going to go into the breakout rooms. Y'all are going to go in there. And how long do you want them to be in there, Lillie?
2 minutes.
Okay, so just a couple of minutes, and maybe not everyone will share, but maybe a couple of you will go ahead and share. And again, if this is where, I think, Becky, you're the one that said until you even saw a recent protest, you didn't understand that was even offensive. So go ahead and just share openly. I'm going to put you in the rooms for just about 2 minutes apiece. So you will head into the room. Let me give you some options here. And I will see you in a moment. Hi, Denise. And is it Mary Beth and Jan? You there? Go ahead
Yay, I can hear. I had to. Yep, I'm here and I can hear you.
and unmute yourself, Mary Beth. You guys can unmute yourselves. I don't know, Denise, if their screen is frozen or not.
I only see you, but I can hear you and I see you.
All right. Well, thank you for joining tonight. Maybe it's just you and me in this one. And I'm trying to manage the other rooms as well. So I'm not a very good conversationalist with you.
That's all right. I'm just like listening. It's all good.
Well, you know what? And that's a lot of it tonight is I know what we talked about with Lillie is a lot of our folks, this really is all brand new for them to have a conversation rather than just watch the news, you know, and be just yelled at by the conversation. So that's part of what tonight is all about.
And lots of good references out there to watch and read and learn as we go and navigate kind of learning. I've already learned some of the phrases that could have racial undertones that you would never even think of, that are just kind of, you know, slang phrases that you use not knowing where they came from. So Mary and I are joining a book club and starting to read some books on just kind of the history of some of the things that we've done as a white culture that were inappropriate and where they came from, and just kind of learning as we go. So I love the conversation. It's definitely timely and overdue.
Yeah, we're going to have a whole bunch of resources at the end, Denise. What can I listen to? What can I watch? What can I read? What can I, you know, so many other resources at the very end. I'm going to bring folks back now, okay? So here people come.
No worries. Go back on mute.
Oh, you don't have to mute yourself yet. I'm over in this room too. Sorry, friends. There you guys, you're coming back. Okay, so it's working, right? For those of you in the large group, if you missed last week, we did a Zoom for Dummies, and we went out into breakout rooms and we came back in just to know what it kind of felt like and how it worked. Kathy and Robin, we missed you guys last week, right?
Yes, we missed being there. We just totally forgot about it. We're very sad.
Sorry about that.
The YouTube.
Yep. Well, Cheryl ran us through breakout rooms and coming back and things like that. So here they come, Lillie. They're all bouncing back now. Look at that. I think what that means, Lillie, when they all come back at once, is they were busy talking. They didn't want to come back into the big group. So I'm going to take that as a good sign.
Yeah, we weren't done.
Yeah, we were.
We weren't either. No, we weren't.
Okay, Lillie, next time we'll give them a little bit longer, okay? Does that sound good?
I wanted to hear more.
Well, in the spirit of learning, I was just given a little bit of coaching that for our Black brothers and sisters, especially that being in a small group when we're talking about this could be harmful and to some people. So it might be that we won't do breakout groups again because of that. So I thank the person who told me that for that learning. Okay, so the second piece is just trying to understand what is white privilege. So I want to read 2 or 3 things for you that actually come from a Black woman who had a white friend inquire about white privilege, inquire about it in a way that was, I really don't see what I'm doing. I realize maybe some white people do, but I don't really know what I'm doing. And I don't think I really understand this. And so she kind of just went through her life and gave some examples of how you can know if you have white privilege. And she did this from her own perspective as an African-American woman. I just want to read, I mean, this was her whole life she tried to line out. I just want to read a few of them so you can have an idea, okay? When I was 3, my family moved into an upper middle class, all white neighborhood. We had a big backyard, so my parents built a pool. Not the only pool on the block, but the only one neighborhood boys started throwing rocks into, white boys. One day my mom ID'd one as the boy from across the street, went to his house, told his mother, and fortunately his mother believed mine. My mom not only got an apology, but also had that boy jump in our pool and retrieve every single rock. No more rocks after that. Then Mom even invited him to come over to swim sometime if he asked permission. Everyone became friends. This one has a happy ending because my mom was and is a badass about matters like these. But I hope you can see, this is the point. The white privilege in this situation is being able to move into a nice neighborhood and be accepted, not harassed, made to feel unwelcome, or prone to acts of vandalism and hostility. So I think that's a great one. You know, it's like it sounds like there was a happy ending, but it's easy to lose sight of the fact that there wasn't, the white people who lived in that nice neighborhood were not subject to the same things. And that is white privilege. Okay. When we started getting our college acceptances during our senior year, I remember some white male classmates were pissed that a Black classmate had gotten into UCLA while they didn't. They said that affirmative action had given him their spot and it wasn't fair. An actual friend of theirs is who got that spot, who'd worked his ass off. The point here is, if you've never been on the receiving end of the assumption that when you've achieved something, it's only because it was taken away from a white person who deserved it, you have white privilege. This is a good one. When I was accepted to Harvard as a fellow AP student, you were witness to what an academic beast I was in high school, she says. 3 separate times she said she encountered white strangers as she prepped for her maiden trip to Cambridge, and those rankle her to this day. The first was the white doctor giving her a physical at Kaiser. Here's how that conversation went. Me, that's the girl. I need to send an immunization report to my college so I can matriculate. The doctor, where are you going? She said, Harvard. The doctor said, you mean the one in Massachusetts? The second time was in a store looking for supplies I needed from Harvard's suggested what to bring with you list. The store employee said, where are you going? I said, Harvard. The store employee said, you mean the one in Massachusetts? The third was at UPS shipping off boxes, boxes of things that I was supposed to bring to Harvard. I was in line behind a white boy mailing boxes to Princeton, and in front of a white woman sending her child's boxes to wherever. The woman said to the boy, "What college are you going to?" The boy said, "Princeton." The woman said, "Congratulations." The woman said to me, "Where are you sending your boxes?" I said, "Harvard." The woman said, "You mean the one in Massachusetts?" So the point of this is, if no one has ever questioned you, your intellectual capabilities or attendance at an elite institution based solely on your skin color, you have white privilege. So hopefully, I think those are great stories, you know, where you start to see how people of color move through their life, and just the color of their skin causes people to say really stupid things. I mean, wasn't that stupid to say, "Oh, you mean Harvard in Massachusetts? Surely you as a black girl are not going there," right? I mean, that was the assumption. And so this is how we start to understand white privilege. I was also reading today, actually, a report that a feminist professor wrote, where she was talking about how with women, what a difficult time we've had getting men to realize their privilege that women don't have. So I think it might be good as a helper to make that same crossover with white privilege, you know, is to, for you women, what have you wanted men to understand about how they can move through the world in ways that you as a woman can't? You don't have those same privileges. And so that is just multiplied over and over when it comes to black people. So this has got to be our sensitivity, is to start paying attention to what do I easily do that I don't even think about, that I just don't pay any attention to because I am white and I'm so used to being white that I don't think about it in any other way. All right. Do we have any questions, Joe?
There are a couple comments here. One of them, Dr. Erin, I think this is helpful. She says the whole male privilege versus female privilege, Leah, I think that's a great comparison, so we can kind of set that in our heads of what are there some things that you didn't think about. Erin's saying, I can relate to that. People couldn't believe I was smart, and she's a doctor of psychology, because she was also a good-looking woman. And so those little, yeah, was that questioned for you, Erin? I don't know. Absolutely, yeah.
So if you could just make an even bigger leap from the questions you may have gotten because you were a certain gender to what if you just get those questions, those judgments, those assumptions because of the color of your skin, right? Yeah. And so we see it in real life. We see if a young black boy has on a hoodie, the whole string of assumptions that white people make about that. And that puts them in danger. I mean, that's just one example, but certainly one that's really prevalent. I think another one you hear a lot about, or I have, I'm a pastor, so in like talking to my congregation, the tendency, so when we see some of these police brutality cases, the tendency to say, well, he did do something wrong, you know, as if that is reason to kill them, you know, where if it was a white person, that same leap almost never happens, or disproportionately happens at the very least. You see what I'm saying? So it's that the privilege I have to make a mistake, you know, to drive drunk or to steal something, or to, you know, to have an accident because or not have my tags, you know, registered, or not have my driver's license with me, or, you know, any of those things. I am not going to get pulled out of my car and thrown on the street and get a knee to my neck. You know, I mean, that is just probably not going to happen to me. And So that is white privilege. That's exactly what that looks like. And so when we say those things like, well, they did do something wrong, you know, that is us exercising those white privilege aggressions and judgments based solely on race. And we just don't realize that we're basing it on color. So those are the places where we really have to start paying greater attention.
Lillie?
Anything coming up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm wondering again, there's a comment that says, one, that white privilege is the privilege to make a mistake. And also, you know, could you speak to the fact that for the folks who here are on the call that identify as white, that it's not, you know, is there a concept of feeling guilty, but it's not my fault that I think this way? I think, and you might be moving that into systemic, you know, racism when we make that leap. But just a concept about white people now feeling guilty. Well, I was raised this way. I was raised inside systems that taught me this way. So I kind of have to unlearn and relearn. One of you can just speak to that a little bit.
Right. Well, you know, I think we do have to unlearn. I mean, I would just start there. It's like we could spend a lot of time on this, on the guilt thing. I would commend to you the book White Fragility, because it's about that. It's about that whole, like, that's another way we exercise our white privilege, is to go on this guilt trip and then make it all about us. You know, and that's what white privilege is when we make it all about us and our lens, and poor us, we got, you know, socialized this way and yada, yada, yada. Well, so it's a big so what? You know, we got to turn the lens another way. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily easy. It may be hardwired in, but it takes up a lot of time feeling bad about us and feeling guilty, and then having to put a whole lot of attention on that. And I think that for Black folks, it just works their last nerve that every conversation gets turned back to us, you know, and whether it's how bad we feel, or we didn't mean to do that, or that's not my fault, or I didn't make you I mean, all of those words are ways that we make it about us. And that has to be the place where we keep, you know,
Yeah,
really
Lillie,
doing our work.
if I can jump in, Lillie, there's a term you used a long time ago. Lillie and I have worked together for years and years and years. Lillie, you used the term, you said when things go sideways, you know, and when I just finished reading that book or listening to that book this week, and the concept of when you hear something and you immediately feel yourself pushing back, like defending yourself for that thought or defending yourself inside that system, that's the definition of white privilege.
That's it.
You know, is that immediate, oh, and so to me, I'm like, oh, Lillie would say, when I hear something and that goes in me sideways and I want to explain my own behavior, explain my own thoughts, or rationalize, I might still be in a learning attitude, right? But I'm still gonna first push it away. And that author said, as soon as you feel that metaphorical push or whatever, and you're even explaining it to yourself, that is the definition right there of white privilege. So I think that book really handles that quite well.
Yeah, I do too. And, you know, I think we ought to pay attention to the fact that white people may already be feeling tired and weary of this after several weeks. Imagine a lifetime of this.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, that's the kind of empathy, and quit making it about us, for us having to focus on this for the last several weeks and watch it on TV and hear all about it. So I think we really have to we got to stop it and stop ourselves and do, every time, like you said, Joe, every time we feel like it's sideways, do your work, put it back on yourself, do your work. Okay. All right, so our last piece was just to spend a few minutes talking about systemic racism, just to maybe give us a sense of what does that mean. The truth of the matter is, we could spend a week just on that, at least. But I want to try to simplify given the time we have tonight. But I don't want to make this a simple issue, all right? Simplify and making it simple are not the same thing. So I think a way to think about systemic racism is to think about the COVID pandemic and how statistically we see that communities of color, and in particular African American communities, are disproportionately affected. All right, so if you follow the system of that, what you discover is that healthcare is not as accessible for the African American community, all right? So then they are not able, because of that lack of access, to take as good a care of themselves, and then they're more susceptible, and then we see this disproportionate number of people being infected. For those of you who live in the state of Texas, this just happens to be one I know about. It's not the only place, but that state, when children in the state of Texas are given their tests in school, the ones that score at a certain level are tagged in the 3rd grade. And the state of Texas starts to calculate from those test scores at that certain level how to plan how many prisons to build, because they believe that those kids they should plan will be in prison when they get to be adults or before. There's a disproportionate number of those kids in the 3rd grade who are African American. That's in our system. Do you see that? That's it. And so the system is built against them from the 3rd grade. I mean, that's just disgusting. Yeah. That's how they're planning for who's going to be in prison. So do you see that then law enforcement, all of those people have that put in their head all the way through. Teachers start to have that put in their head. Another thing is how public school systems are defunded. And then public schools have large numbers of African American students. And so there starts to be less of a good education. Then there's white flight to private schools. Now, do some white kids go to lower income schools? Sure. But disproportionately, they are Black students. So do you see, so that's just it perpetuates then all through their life. You know, their education is not as good, and then they don't have a leg up trying to go to college, and then trying to get a job, and then some of them have already been tagged to go to prison. So that's what systemic racism looks like. Just take a topic, take a system of any sort in our country, and you'll be able to see how it's hardwired into our structures. So that's why Band-Aids don't have a prayer of working. And that's why you're hearing all of this crowd, you know, this loud crying out to be heard, is that until we break apart those systems and reorder them, this will just continue to happen. Yeah. And so when the protests are over, you know, when those are, although they have been sustained for a really long time now, so I don't know how long that will last, but there will be a point when they will go away. Then we are challenged with how do we keep fighting to make sure that we take apart these systems. Think about it in your own, whatever kind of profession you're in. Think about it in your family system. How is racism built in? And this is where things like, well, I'm not a racist. I have Black friends. Oh, man. Yeah. You know, being a racist doesn't mean you don't like Black people. Being a racist is the ways that we are conditioned and socialized to participate in these structures and systems. And that automatically makes us racists. So I'll tell you for myself, I walk through the world all the time assuming that I am a racist so that I can try to pay attention to the times that it comes up, and it's clear to me that it's coming out and it's coming up in me. Okay.
Yeah. And
All right. Do we have questions?
yeah, Ann from Colorado Springs. Ann Yanni, you want to unmute yourself and just share that? Ann, you've been at school in a system for a long time that works with more underprivileged families, right? So you want to share that, what you just shared in the chat box with everybody?
Yeah, because I work in a Title I school, and in my classroom, about 90% of the kids were on free and reduced lunch. And my son teaches at a school that has high test scores and professors' kids 3 miles away. My kids, there were more than 60% who had no computers, no devices, no internet. His kids all went home with devices. They continued their learning while we scrambled to try to figure out how do we just continue to connect with these kids, let alone give them content. And so I think, and our district's hashtag is equity, and I say equity schmequity because there was none. We had lots of children of color who did not get to continue learning.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, yes, that third grade number, it's ingrained in our heads, and that's why we try so hard to get them reading at grade level by third grade to
Right.
stem the tide, not
Right.
roll tide, but
Right.
Not that
Right.
time. Thanks, Ann. Lily, I also was able to pull up the one blue, the becoming anti-racist slide, if you wanted to speak to that at all. When I look at in the
Yeah.
comments, people are just continuing to make comments about you're bringing awarenesses, you're bringing memories to people, and so they're kind of mentioning those in the comment box. And we're open.
Before you bring that
Sure.
slide up, just a personal story. I grew up in Alabama, so I was going into the 8th grade when integration happened in Alabama. And I lived in a small town in a county of only 20,000 people in South Alabama. And the summer before integration happened in the fall, 3 private schools were built and put together over the summer so that white kids could go to a private school. 3 in a county of 20,000 people, not 20,000 kids, 20,000 people. So, even, when I was in the 8th grade, this white flight where then the money went with them, all of the affluence went with them, all of the opportunities went to those private schools. And think about what that does to a white girl formative age of 13, right? And what are the messages that go with that? And how do I have to every day remind myself of that? Now I was lucky, my parents made me stay in the public school. They were just like, no, you won't, we're not doing that. But I would say now, looking back on it, I was lucky that they did that. But still, I was right smack in the middle of the most racist thing anybody could have ever done, which is we will do anything, include spend a boatload of money on 3 new schools, private schools, so that we don't have to send our kids to a school that was going to have 4 black kids. 4. Yeah, just crazy. So it's in us, it's in our, it's in our systems, and it's in our DNA. It's in everything we've been a part of for a long time. All right, you want to put that slide?
Yeah, I do. Barb,
Okay,
maybe
okay.
as I put that slide up, Barb, you can you say that this was part of your family, that the structure is not hidden and built inside your absolute family. If you want to share about that while I screen share here.
Oh yeah, my family is overtly and vocally Tea Party Republican, and
you know, kind of unashamedly racist and feels free to articulate that, you know, in all circumstances. So it's, anytime I spend with my family is a challenge. And I come back with my teeth a few layers shorter than they were from grinding them. But, you know, they are not in a, you know, intending in any way, shape, or form to embark on a journey. They're just not inclined to want to do that.
Yeah. Thank you, Barb. Lily, there's your
This
slide.
would be my family of origin.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Pam Owens, I want to make sure I give her credit for this, who is an African-American business consultant that I work with sometimes. And she shared this with me, and she made this model on becoming anti-racist. And so I love this because she divides it into 3 zones: the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone, and gives you some examples of what you might be doing, saying, or thinking to sort of locate yourself. So on this journey, where are you? So I would commend to you to look at this. I think we share the slides and stuff, right? So so that you have a way to start locating yourself in these zones, so you can kind of start to see where is your work. You can see in the fear zone there what the different kinds of things are that you might say or feel. Okay. And then I know we're coming up on our time here, so
Okay.
You're also going to get some resources, as Joby mentioned in the beginning, things you can read, things you can watch, things you can do. So I hope you'll start digging in. I mean, it's part of being in the arena, part of doing our work, because we're going to have to dig in a lot of resources to help.
I can go ahead and bounce through these, Lily. If you guys want a great way to take it to capture this, if you're looking at the if you're online, sorry, if you are watching tonight from a computer, if you take your telephone out, we will send these out in an email. So another reason for you to give us your email address in the chat box, we'll go ahead and send this deck of slides, but I'll go through this. I don't know if you want to lift up 1 or 2, Lily, at a time. There's 3 slides that answer the question, what can I read? So, and
yeah, and there are also notes beside them about how long it will take. So if you've got 5 extra minutes and it says it's a 4-minute read, then there's one you can just go and pick up, fill up that 5 minutes. So I would just commend all of us to, you know, do this work. This Talking White Fragility, that's when we were talking about tonight, or there's a book called White Fragility, but this is just an article about white fragility. So this whole idea about guilt and for us, that's what all that's about.
Okay,
you can go on to the next.
Second slide. Again, there's 3 slides that answer the question, what can I read? So these are more things to read. You can take a picture of these, and like I said, as long as you put your email address, your name and your email address in the chat box, we will make sure to send this whole deck out to each of you. Third slide of what can I read? And I saw also, I think Dr. Aaron, you mentioned in passing, Glennon Doyle has a book called Untamed, New York Times bestseller right now. There's a chapter in there that is on racism, and it's her speaking as a mother when she just realized she does a lot of speaking about her daughters, you know, and that whole, like you said, Lily, that whole gender issue. And then when she dug into racism, it was her aha moment around just the challenge of being a mom of, you know, Black babies and brown babies as compared to the privilege she had with her children of being white babies. So the next one is what can I watch? And here are some videos. There's also a couple TEDx this last TEDx, I just grabbed that, Lily, and put that in from your email to me today. That is about a 5-minute video. We thought about showing that to y'all tonight, but I really, again, I left also, each of these is a link. So when you do get the slides, I made each of these that are underlined, it's an actual link, and I tested them. When you click on these, it will take you right out to the actual source document. So a TEDx there. What can I watch? Also, Jordan, you just said, Jordan, if you can unmute yourself, you said watch, was it a movie, something 13? I saw that go by, but I can't see my chat box anymore when I'm sharing.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's called The 13th. If you really want to know the history of the U.S. From the Reconstruction era till now, and it really goes into some of the reasons why there's a school to prison pipeline.
Yeah,
School to prison pipeline.
That's right.
And it's called The 13th.
It's a very good movie.
The 13th, like the 13th Amendment.
There you go. There you go. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate that. What can I listen to?
I see Just Mercy. And you can get that on Netflix. In fact, there's a whole series of good films for racism on Netflix now. They put them at the top of their banner. So.
And Lily, didn't they? I think it's Just Mercy. Isn't Just Mercy the one that anywhere you can see that they've waived the fees and costs for that, so folks can? Yeah, I read an article from someone who wrote about watching that movie. And again, just the levels of depth we can continue to go in our own learning, in our own recognizing of the part we have played and the part systems have played in creating this. So what can I listen to? What can I explore? Some resources there as well. And then who can I follow? Lily, are these all different people, podcasts, things like that? I wasn't quite sure.
Well, they're just people who have podcasts or blogs, or I mean, they sort of have an ongoing conversation about these issues, and so you can follow them. They're all well, I think I have followed about 5 of them, and they're all really very interesting. The Conscious Kid is particularly, I've enjoyed that one a lot, and Louisa Duran is really nice. Yeah, they're just people who you follow because they have an ongoing blog or a podcast.
Fabulous. And anybody, if you have something else also, anybody who's participating in the call tonight, if you have a resource like Jordan just shared, and I can't see my chat box right now with my slides up, but Jordan just shared or Aaron just shared, if you go ahead and type that into the chat box, I'll show you in a minute how you can save the chat, or like I do, you can also take pictures of the chat to get a memory of those resources as well. Finally, what can I do? And Lily, why don't you go ahead and speak to these?
Well, these are, I mean, I hope that we're doing all these things simultaneously, that we're adding to our learning, our education, our understanding, but we're also acting at the same time. Yep. So I think this list of things to do, whether it's helping you to know the places to, put out your opinion, to write your congresspeople, to the different kinds of organizations that need support, need help, need white people to help, need money. But I think money is the least of it if you want to know the truth. I think our help in lots of other ways. So I think us walking beside and supporting is really important. The thing I wanted to leave us with, just as a thought, is, right now we also have in front of us all these issues about Confederate statues, flags, and, I think first thing I want to just remind you all, as someone who grew up in the capital of the Confederacy, is that only lasted 5 years. Okay, this is not a bastion of history. And so we make it as it is, if it's this big thing, that to take it away is some monumental big deal. I want to put that in perspective. It was a 5-year thing. And the other thing is, with regard to the statues and stuff, as white people, I hear all the time, why would we want to do away with our history? It's part of our history. It's like, it would be if those statues were telling the whole story. But there's also a part of our history that's just as rich and just as true that is inherently left out in the telling of the stories about those statues and other kinds of artifacts from the Confederacy. So, you know, I just hope that we'll start to name that and to say, wait a minute, we have wiped out a whole section of history by not telling the whole story. And to make sure that we're correcting people about that, because it's not true. It's not true that we'd be wiping out history. We've already wiped out a whole, at least half of the story. So we've already done that.
Yes, yes. Well, it is 8:02. We always want to honor our time, although an hour when we get into a good conversation never does feel like it's long enough. But I'd love you. I first want to say, if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and unmute yourselves and give Lillie some love. I know she has not been feeling well this week, and yet she still extends herself like this. So you can go ahead and unmute yourselves and give Lillie some real live love.
Lillie, that was amazing. That was so good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lillie.
Bravo.
Thank you, Lillie. Thank you, Lillie.
Thank
you.
Thank you, Lillie.
And I just want to say, I so appreciate so many
Thanks
of
for
you
showing up.
turning up tonight. And I know we have a wonderful global group here tonight. And I know, you know, Cheryl and I are about, we've got a U-Haul in the driveway tonight. We're packing up and getting ready to go home. And I wanted to have this conversation, Lillie, because so many of, I think, our families, like Barb, you lifted up, we're not all aligned in our political views right now. And so how do we take the politics out of this conversation? You know, if we're binary in our political views, can we still walk toward each other in the social justice and social injustice conversation of what's going on? And again, it was a US event. It became a global and still is a global event. So I just want to lift up that as we have said during our pushback on social distancing, we wanted to say it's physical distancing, but social connection. That's what we're striving to do here, to create these Tuesday nights so you can feel connected. And you also feel like there's a place where you can ask an honest question. You can say absolutely the wrong thing, because we know because you're here, your heart's in the right place, right? And yet our heart being in the right place, we heard tonight, is not enough. It is no longer enough. I think, Aaron, you and I were chatting the other day, and you sent me a text that said, in the information age, ignorance is no longer an excuse. You know, in the information age, ignorance is no longer an excuse. And so we wanted to bring this love here tonight. Lillie and I said, you're just the right person for doing it. Your tone of voice, the person you are to all of us, we understand that you're telling us the truth. You're kind of telling us to get to work. You're telling us it's our work to do, but you're doing it in a very loving fashion. So I just want to lift that up and thank you for that so much. And there is work to do. I would encourage you to reach out to folks who you may not be completely aligned with, you know, in our political state. Can you come together around this conversation? Can you listen? Can you bring a real sense of curiosity? Why do they hold the position they hold? Because this whole chat group is about, I didn't know. I didn't know until I knew. And then once I knew, once you know better, you can do better, right? And that's for each of us. We may be in different levels around that level of work and around that consciousness. And as long as you came in tonight with, you know, some level of interest and desire and care, and you moved a little bit. Did you learn something tonight? Anybody learn something tonight or hear something they needed to hear for the first time? Man, that's what we're all about.
Absolutely.
And so, Lillie, thank you so much. I do want to end tonight with a really good note. Tom, if you're on here, we just found out yesterday morning that Ken finally has a negative, officially negative COVID test. And so I know a lot of family out here and friends waiting for that information. Tom, of course, does not yet have his results, but we're all assuming that by definition, if Ken doesn't have it, none of the rest of us have caught it here at Sanctuary, that Tom, you're healthy. And tonight, I'll tell you, we had dinner around the table for the first time in what, 5-6 weeks? So Sanctuary is a little more like Sanctuary tonight. So thank you all for your prayers around that and continuing to to keep Ken in your prayers. Tom will tell you, he's, go ahead, Tom, I think you're unmuted now. Ken is not, he's not whipping around the
Can
property.
you hear me, Joe?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead and let us know.
No. He is continuing to get better. He still is coughing a little bit, but not at all like he was. And he can only take a little walk around the yard or to the garden. And then when he comes back, he has to go immediately to bed. So he's extremely weak, and it's probably going to take some time for him to get his health back.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And so keep the prayers coming.
I just watched two sisters kiss. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We know there's loads of folks waiting and asking how Ken's been doing. I will also say there's been
That's
some
right.
questions. Did
He
we in
is
fact
doing
record?
better.
He's doing better. And so Barb Crabtree, when we send you an email, just to let you know, we have a YouTube channel. It's up. This recording we posted there tonight. So if there were folks that weren't able to make it tonight live, we'll have this recording as well as all the rest of the Sanctuary Online recordings on our YouTube channel. And so when you get your email from Talk to Us at Sanctuary in the Woods, if you click down on the bottom, there'll be the YouTube icon. Click right there, it will take you right into our channel. So we're trying to progress with technology every week, and we appreciate your prayers and your support for all that. So God bless y'all.
Hello?
Good to see you.
Hello?
Lily.
Can I say one thing as a sending forth?
Yes,
Is that if you know Black people, have Black friends, know them socially or know them professionally, know them at church, whatever, make it your job in the next few days to reach out to them.
yes,
To just say you're thinking about them, that
yes.
you're feeling empathy for what they must be going through, and ask them to tell you their story.
Yes.
I think if there's nothing else you can do, that is certainly always something you can do. So to say you're feeling for them and then listen to their stories. Okay.
Send them forth. Thank you. Do the work. Do your work. Love y'all.
Good night.
You can unmute and chat if you like.
Thank you.